Hey, it's Krys,
And Valerie.
and welcome back to Haunted Couture, the show where we break down the wardrobes of your fave horror films and TV shows and media and what have you. And let's just say we are so back.
If you haven't guessed it, today we will be covering all the costume design nominees for the 98th Academy Awards. We know the awards are on March 15th, but we figured we'd give you guys the rundown for each nominee and their corresponding film, some fun details you might have missed while watching, and who we think will take home the gold.
Let's run through all of the nominees in order of their announcement. You want to take it away with Avatar?
Woohoo! I think everybody saw this coming. I think Avatar: The Way of Water was nominated last year, but they're nominated again this year for Fire and Ash. Again, James Cameron, Hollywood legend. So for Avatar: Fire and Ash, we have costume designer Deborah L. Scott, who has worked with James Cameron before. Little indie film from 1997, Titanic, is when they first worked together. They reunited for Avatar in 2009, and then again for Avatar: The Way of Water in 2022, and now once again collaborating for Fire and Ash. If you're familiar with Avatar, you know it's a pretty intricate VFX heavy film. So, she poured a lot of her work into this. We were debating on whether to give you guys kind of like the premise of these films just because they're like 3 hours long. So, we can say you guys look up the premise
Google
of the
it.
film yourselves. Yeah, Google it. Because it's a lot of in-depth storytelling here. But yeah, let's get into the inspiration behind the costume designs. Again, if you've seen the film, very VFX heavy. And in this film, we introduced new Na'vi. We were introduced to the Wind Traders and the Ash People, who I guess are the sort of villains of the film.
Okay.
So Wind Traders, basically, if you've seen the film, they're the ones that travel across Pandora on like these aircraft-shaped giant jellyfish.
Okay.
And so for so for them, the biggest thing that Scott was leading into was the color story for each Na'vi. With the Wind Traders, they are essentially like the weavers, so basically, for them, what Scott said was that they wanted a fantastical, jubilant history behind them, that, again, they don't really know much about in the film, but, just from the visuals alone, I think they were expecting the audience to sort of put, like, the mystery behind their history together. So, I was reading an article by Variety where basically every department of the film kind of broke down their process. If you've read that article, you know it's pretty in depth. So there was a lot of information that was in that. In the article, Deborah focused on two characters specifically. That's the captain of the Wind Traders, Paylock. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Played by David Thewlis. And one of the pieces that she focused on was his cloak, like the robe that he wears. And if you guys have seen the film, or if you just look up images on your own, if that's not really your thing, it's a very vibrant like world that they've built. And if you're
Yeah.
familiar with Avatar, obviously it's very like colorful. So for him, they really wanted to focus on like earth tones for his color story. So the cloak that he wears, it's almost reminiscent of like a sunrise, very like
Cool.
intense. Yeah. So if you look it up, like it's really cool. Like it's gorgeous. But basically like this piece was supposed to symbolize regalness and like his stature in his clan. So like he's like the captain, so he's the leader. So for that they look to indigenous people for reference as far as like the vibrancy of the designs go and like the colors. And she focused on kind of describing like the inner lining and the outer, like the outside of the robe. So for the inner lining, it was really neat that it connected to the narrative behind his clan of being like weavers. So the inside was made from woven fabric, and it was designed with multiple pieces and had leaf prints embellished on the inside. Versus like the outside, you see kind of like a dyed rustic leather material that was used. And so for this was actually really cool. I thought she researched aerial photography So, kind of focusing on that, like, looking down on the world aspect of that type of imagery. So, that was, the inspiration when designing the outside of the cloak, where, she leaned into this idea of motion, so, like, wispy clouds as well as, like, sinewy rivers, creating kind of like this illusion of, like, as your eyes kinda travel down the piece, you're traveling with the color and the swirls on the cloak, which I thought was really cool. So if you look that up or if you've seen the film, you can kind of see that effect as well. And then when it came to, like, his collar, again, it was just, like, another layer of regality for the character. So for that, she molded, like, leather material with feathers. So again, kind of going back into, like, that indigenous people influence. And then the other character that she focused on during the article, was Varong. Hope I'm saying that right as well, played by Una Chaplin. She from what I gathered, she's kinda like the villain, like the Ash people, kinda like the villains in the story. But for the Ash people, the cool thing about, like, each individual, like, clan, so you have, like, the water, the ash, now you have, like, the wind traders. It was very cool that she said that each individual clan basically makes their clothing out of, like, their surrounding environment. So for the Ash people, they wanted them to look minimal, dark, kind of rustic and dirty. Because again, like, they're in, like, this volcanic
Ash.
area. Yeah, they're Ash. They're, like, in this volcanic area. So that kind of inspired the design for them, and then specific materials that she used were, like, worn down leather, metal, stone, and, like, some feathers as well. And for their color story, she really leaned into the red and orangey red color palette, especially for, like, their body paint, if you've seen them as well. If not, look up an image. So because they're, like, like, their costume design is kind of minimal, they really focused on her character, this this headdress. So if you see it, it's kind of very, like, peacock-like, which is kind of the effect that they were going for. She built it from a collection of feathers. So with that, her and James basically, wanted her to have something, like, she needs a battle headdress because obviously, like, in her everyday look, it's very minimal, so she needed that one piece that helps her, like, stand out. So, yeah, it's very, very intricate work, but basically, for these 2 characters, it took her 4 months to create their costumes,
Oh
which
my
is
god.
crazy 'cause when you think of, like, Varong, like, it's very minimal, so it's just, like, this headdress that was, like, taking them some time, and then, basically, she also described how because the movie is so technologically driven, she basically had to do the costuming process twice. So, one was for the actors, so making, like, the physical pieces versus the second time creating these pieces for the virtual world. So, working really closely with the VFX team, kind of, again, just giving them something physical so then they know how to translate that into the virtual aspects of the film. So, basically, she said the process basically was starting with the body, then the face, and then slowly incorporating, like, the costume pieces as they were building the virtual world. And the final touch was the color. So, yeah, they just basically wanted to give the virtual artists, something physical to help them, 1, have the audience believe that this is a real world, and then 2, obviously, like, help them create that effect. So, yeah, it was really, really neat. A lot of, again, just intricate details behind this film.
They say James Cameron likes two things: one, film, and the ocean, and this is
Yeah.
his child. And the more I learn about this project, even just from you, I'm like, yeah, this man takes the ocean very, very seriously. Like, he does not play around with it. And I just cannot imagine how tired their hands are just from like doing every little thing. Cause like you said, it's like a whole world, and it looks like a video game, and it's so
Yeah.
like, if you like work in like costume design or like production design, you know how hard that is. Like, it's insane. And then we have these actors here that are just like doing incredible work to like look so animated. And I don't know. I just think them being nominated for the first time in this category says a lot. Like, they really did their big one with this project.
Yeah, yeah, and I think in this no, it's a different piece. Um, with, like, previous films, she had created, like, I believe 3,000 designs on one of the Avatar films. I can't remember if it's the first one or the second one, but I'm like, "That's crazy that she's doing twice the work to have it translate into the virtual characteristic of the film.
Dedication.
Yeah.
Amazing. All
And then,
right.
of course, we have Frankenstein, if you wanna take it away.
As the Frankenstein nerd, yes. So this is based off of the beloved 1818 novel by Mary Shelley. And if you've been here before with us, you know this is not the first time Kate Hawley has worked with Guillermo. They have worked together for Crimson Peak and Pacific Rim. But together, they transformed the text into a surreal, striking, colorful adaptation in 2025. So, if you're like us and you already know what the deal is, there's a lot of religious trauma in this movie. Family trauma, man versus nature, and love, passion, and most importantly, how far we'd go to find a place called home. And when we feel like monsters walking among men, what does that even mean? So, if every character is given a signature color, and this is Guillermo's thing, just like with James Cameron, they just love storytelling through color. And I believe they're actually besties in real life too, which is kind of crazy. Their lore goes nuts, by the way. If you ever want to like Google that too, like, man, just go Google it. It's insane. But basically, red stands for Victor and Claire, green's Elizabeth, blue is Harlander, William, and Victor's father. And the creature is a mosaic of all of these colors, if you look very, very closely. And Kate infamously draws inspo from medical sciences, nature, in filming environments, sets like greens, reds, all played a really big role in the costuming, reflecting their psychedelic world, according to Kate. Like with Victor's lab. Like it looks something straight out of an acid trip. Like it's insane. And Victor, she describes, is a rock star. And his wardrobe is inspired by Mick Jagger and Prince. And the creature's design was revealed to be inspired by Iggy Pop, according to Guillermo del Toro. So, if you're also a big nerd like us, you also probably noticed that with Claire, there's a lot of very interesting patterns going on with her dresses. All of these dresses were hand dyed fabrics, and you could look for behind the scenes photos, and it's just insane. Like they drew inspo from everything for Claire and for Elizabeth. And I wanted to point out the blue shawl real quick. It's supposed to be moth wings, which is really, really cool. She's always striving to be free of a patriarchal, misogynistic society and expectations, and that plays a really big role in who Elizabeth is, in her beliefs, in her spirituality. So the green dress stands for Malachite, which stands for change. She's transforming into somebody new. Um, a white dress, the white dress at the end, the wedding dress, the bride dress, is basically supposed to be like a moth. And Guillermo described him filming that scene specifically of her opening the door is like her floating with wings. Like that was exactly what they were trying to convey in that exact scene. And she's just fluttering in the dark, you know, her sleeves mimicking those of the Bride of Frankenstein, of course. And the blue dress is supposed to be X-rays because, like Claire, she kind of is a mirror of Victor's mother. He is the king of mother and daddy issues, if you have not noticed. And
The OG.
and basically, she draws him in, but she also repels him. She rejects him, and as we can see later on in the film, that does not go well. He does not like rejection, and even the bonnet that we see her wear in the basement with the creature is supposed to be just like the inside of the coffin that Claire was buried in. So I wanted to point this out because I thought it was really cool, kind of gross, but really cool. So Claire's veil in the beginning, when she's on the steps with Victor, while they're waiting for their dad to, like, I don't know, go home, I guess. So her veil is red and is floating in the wind, right? And it's supposed to symbolize an umbilical cord, according to Guillermo, because it's supposed to show how Victor was never severed by his mother's side. Like he was always connected to that trauma through that, like, part of himself that he was kind of ashamed of, but also like he never got over. So he was so adamant on this thing flying in the wind, it could not be still. Like he wanted it to show like this really long, just like, again, like a veil, like this trail of like blood. And as we can see later on, spoiler alert, Claire does die when giving birth to his brother William too. So it's a double entendre with that. And again, it just goes to show that there's so there's so many really cool, gross little details like that sprinkled across the film, and it's just fantastic. It's marvelous in every single way.
I feel like it's every day we learn more about the film,
Truly,
which is
truly.
great. I mean, I appreciate it because, you wanna pick up every single detail.
Like literally every frame is like a painting. It's incredible, and I would think to say like Mary Shelley would be very very proud. So they did their big one with this film.
Yeah, they did, and then 2 besties, I didn't know that him and James were acquainted, so look at them being nominated together.
I know. And I found that out last year too. I was like, wait, that makes a lot of sense actually, because their directing styles are kind of like similar, but also not that similar. I feel like with Guillermo, he's very like traditional monsters. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Versus with James, he's like more like I want to say more traditional in a sense of like the way he fleshes out his characters, and his cinematography is very like expansive. With Guillermo, it's more
Mhm.
narrow. So
Yeah.
it makes sense. They balance each other out in that way.
Alrighty, so from Frankenstein, we have Hamnet. Do you wanna take that one away too?
Yes, because this
I
is
was like,
also
I know she wants to talk about this one.
because this is like also like one of my favorite movies that came out like last year. Like I don't know why film Twitter was tearing this to bits like yesterday, but you get it if you get it. If you don't, you don't. Okay, but basically, if you don't know what I'm talking about, because I feel like the mainstream like people don't really know that much about Hamnet, but basically, Hamnet is based off the play Hamlet by Shakespeare, and the costume designer is Malgosia Czuzanska. And the film is based off the 2020 novel by Maggie O'Farrell, same name, of course. I saw a tweet yesterday of someone saying that like they were at the movies and they were just sobbing, and then the lady next to them was like a grandma, and she had a copy of Hamnet on her lap, and they were like,
Aw.
"Oh,
Oh,
okay."
that's so cute.
I know. And it just makes me love it even more. And let me just say, Jessie Buckley, who plays Agnes, William Shakespeare's wife and the mother of his children, and Paul, who is, of course, Will, they give some of the like most incredible performances this year. And I don't even know how people think that like Paul was just like not doing his best work here. Where in my
Mhm.
opinion, like it's pretty up there to be honest. Like next to normal people, like this is
Yeah.
pretty like spot on. I was really impressed by him. No offense, Paul, but he did he did impress me. And Hamlet follows the mysterious and devastating backstory of the iconic play Hamlet, of course, like I explained before, and how art is an incredible moving medium for us as people, whether it be, its ability to heal and provide and give us that closure we need when we experience grief, and to basically keep people's legacies alive over time. So, like I mentioned before, too, the two main characters are Agnes and Will. Agnes, in the beginning of the project, both Malgosia and Zhao, Chloe Zhao, the director, talked about the various types of blood and its hues when it came to Agnes's character, which is kind of cool. And we see like these colors kind of evolve with Agnes throughout the film. And she even says like the first image in my head was a giant beating heart muscle just throbbing and pulsing with blood when she was thinking of Agnes, because she's the beating heart of the story essentially. And these shades of red are prominent in these linens that she wears all the time. Not just because it's a period piece and that's what they wore back then, but because like Agnes is a very free-spirited person. She's not a witch per se, but she's very spiritual. And we see her kind of inherit those spiritual beliefs through her mother, which we then find out she passed away when she was very, very young. And we see like these reds kind of darken as Agnes experiences so many different levels of grief, whether it be, being married for the first time, having kids, losing a child, and moving away from home and having to deal with this grief without her husband by her side. Which, by the way, I have seen a lot of people say that like, oh, this movie is just an excuse for like all like the artists in the world to like be deadbeats, which that is not the case. Okay, I don't know what movie you were watching, but like that's not the case at all. In fact, it was like Agnes who told Will, like, I want you to live your dream and provide for us essentially if you make it big. And he did. As we can see, we still talk about him to this day. So they basically like supported each other, and it makes their love kind of naive, a little bit innocent in a way, the way that they like support each other's freedom and their creativity. Will never made her change as a person because again, back then that's a really big thing because, Puritan culture, whatever. Um, and people around her even told her like, "Hey, dude, you're a witch. Like, it's not normal to not go to church and like do all these things and all these rituals." And she's like, "I don't care." And Will's like, "I don't care either. So their love is very innocent in that way. And Terzanska also notes that over time the red kind of rusts and it hardens, kind of like Agnes and her heart. And even in the play, Will, tells her through Hamlet's dialogue, "Open your heart to love and to freedom and to creativity again." And that's what really gets her crying because she's like, "Oh my God, I kind of did harden as a person. Like, I really haven't been letting this love into my life like I did before with my kids." And with Will, they try to stay away from like that, no offense, Shakespeare, that kind of like ugly, like, hairline
Yes.
portrait of the bard. They did keep the earring though. They did. I forgot the name of that piercing back then, which we now call lole piercing, but it's like a really specific thing back then. But
Mm.
yeah, he did have a piercing if you want to Google that too. But basically, Malgosia says the images that we have in our heads were painted years after his death. Okay, so like we weren't really like there. Also, like with the paintings back then, you know what I mean? Like
Mm.
they weren't that like accurate. So they
Yeah.
tried to like, base that off of what we know of Will through his work. And so he wears a lot of ash and blue in contrast to Agnes's red. Agnes is very passionate, just like Will, but in her own ways. But Will is more of a dreamer. He has his head up in the clouds all the time. He's working, and his clothes is based off of Elizabethan clothes. It's very modular, as Terzanska likes to put it. Basically, you could take apart pieces like the sleeves and attach them elsewhere. It's like Mr. Potato Head, but like with older clothes, essentially, to put it nicely. And she used this as part of like her way of conveying his emotional state, how he takes apart different parts of himself, whether it be integrating into his work or with his family, or trying to connect back with nature, like with Agnes, because that's also a really big thing with Agnes. She even has a hawk at one point that like she loves going outside. But yeah, like I mentioned before, they're very, very different with their apparel and with the way that they express themselves. And Will's blue and green hues stem from his connection to the Thames and Avon River throughout the film, which Agnes is kind of scared of at one point because she does have a vision that like he's gonna drown in this river. And when she's pregnant, she also like kind of has this like paranoia of like her child drowning. And spoiler alert, she does give birth to like twins, and one of them kind of does come out stillborn, but then
Mm.
like magically kind of comes back to life, and she thinks, "Oh, it's because of my spirituality that like this child survived." And that's why like she's so protective over Hamlet, who almost passed away, and then we see later on he kind of did jinx himself. He passes away from the plague. His clothes become so bleak over time, depicting this paranoia, this really weird, like if you have like PTSD, like waiting for the other shoe to drop, which is
Mm.
exactly what Will kind of like portrays in the film too. Like he was traumatized by his dad beating him most of the time. And he's constantly waiting for that other shoe to drop. And we see that with his apparel, that like he becomes kind of frail and he becomes like a shell of a person. And their children are kind of like the mediums of everything going around. Like they're very much covered in like traditional fabrics, very like traditional linens, like from back then. To ensure that the clothing was lighter for the kids, they basically had them like in these linens so like they can run around and do whatever. They're very active kids, and they're all dressed in shades of rust and blues and neutral colors. So they are kind of like the mediators in this conversation. And I also like how they kind of like kept that detail of them having three kids, because if you like Shakespeare, you know Macbeth, the three witches, and that kind of is a really big theme in like the movie, like the number three. There's like whether three people in the background, there's three kids, there's like this constant like emphasis on the number three, and their kids is like the number one like red flag with this, and they kind of like overlook it too at one point that like, oh, we kind of jinx ourselves having like three kids. Like, oops. but but you know what? It is what it is. So some fun facts that I found while researching was the bodice that Agnes wears outside is made out of tree bark. It's made out of Uganda tree bark, and it's made out of a trunk of a tree, which again goes back with that motherly type of like theme they got going on with Agnes and her spirituality. And then Malgoja's fave material from Will's costume was a material called mushroom leather, since the scratches made it look like the underside of a mushroom. And one of my personal favorite details, as someone that was watching, was how he tells Agnes a story of Orpheus. I think that's the right name for it. And in the story, it's about a man who's in love with his wife, and she dies. He goes to the underworld, and basically the Greek gods give him a choice. Like, okay, you can have her soul back, but you have to drag her from the underworld, and you have to not look back. She has to have enough trust in you to follow you out, and you cannot look back. And guess what he does? He looks back, and her soul is trapped in the underworld forever. And with Will, he tells Agnes this story, and that's kind of like how they connect and how they bond, and essentially how they express their grief at the end of Hamlet. They tell stories to each other. And in the back of Will's jacket, there's slashes, which again goes back to that story of Orpheus. And Malgosia describes these as being pinkings. Yeah, like the color pink. And she says with Will, we see only a few scratches and tears in the beginning, but they gradually grow when he comes to London and his life becomes more complicated. And that's kind of like where we see Will become more hollow on the inside. And then we see him express this hollowness in Hamlet. And I'm not even going to go over like the ending. It's just so incredible, and it's just so tragic. But I highly recommend it if you haven't seen it yet. It's a really great movie, and the costuming is no exception to that.
I love that term, pinking.
Right? I was like, okay, so they stabbed him in the back, but no, it's like an actual term. It's really cool. I was like, oh, okay, cool.
So yes, definitely before the Oscars, watch the film. And yeah, we won't spoil anything if you plan on watching. But now on to Marty Supreme, who has apparently been having a field day on Twitter.
Oop.
I don't know too much about that. I do not keep up with this film. So, I mean, I don't know if you want to give them a rundown of this, but
Okay.
there's some tension going on there.
As someone that did not like the film and who watched it, let's just say that there was an article that was released yesterday about Josh Safdie, who's the director, and there's speculation that allegedly his brother was the one that leaked it because he's salty that his movie The Smashing Machine with The Rock didn't receive any nominations outside of makeup and hair, which, by the way, he should be grateful for that, okay? Because I watched The Smashing Machine a couple of days ago. Also was not that great, I'm gonna be honest. But I think in the end, like, they do work great together, but like not great separate. And the makeup was pretty great for The Smashing Machine. Like, I was actually kind of like blown away that they made Dwayne look really weird. Like,
Yeah.
it took us a second to realize, like, oh, it's actually like The Rock. And his wig is insane. Like, you can see his scalp through the wig. Mind you, I think they did blow half the budget on this man's wig, but you know what? Whatever. And then Emily Blunt, they put her in like a Party City kind of wig, but you know what? It worked. It worked for him, and the prosthetics were incredible. And I will say that too about Marty Supreme. Like, Timmy's skin looks like disgusting. Like, it looks kind of like like, even Gwyneth Paltrow was like, she was like putting him on to Goop because like she thought like his skin was like kind of messed up, and I thought so too. I was like, oh, like he went full on method because he kind of like did go that route with his eyes. He like wore specific contacts to make his vision look really messed up. So I was like, oh, maybe he like rubbed some oil on his skin or something. I don't know. Like, his skin kind of looks crazy. And no, it's the prosthetics. So I will say the Safdies do know what they're doing with prosthetics designers. But if you have not seen Marty Supreme, which God bless your heart, thank you for saving your money. It's about table tennis. It's about table tennis in the 50s, I believe. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's about men believing that ambition is a monster and they will screw everyone and anyone over to get what they want. And fatherhood, yay, at the end. That's basically the synopsis of the movie. I'm not even joking. Like, if you've watched it, you know exactly what I mean. But anyways,
Yeah.
continue with the, with the costuming.
Tale as old as time. Um, yeah, so let's get into the costume design for this table tennis film. So the costume designer was Miyako Belisi. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing that right. And basically, kind of the question that she was looking to answer through the costuming for the film was, who is the man Marty wants to project to the world?
Okay.
Is basically like the question behind the costuming. Like, who is this man and who does he want to be in the world? So basically, Belisi and Josh Safdie have worked together in the past as well on two of his previous features, 2019's Uncut Gems and Good Time from 2017. But you may also know her work from Scenes from a Marriage, which I believe is Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson,
Yeah.
um, and then The History of Sound as well. And this was
Oh,
actually pretty
yay.
cool. She actually started out as a fashion stylist and then kind of made her way into film. I thought that was a pretty neat fact. But basically, her starting point was thousands and thousands of photographs. So I think it was Safdie, Josh, that would was talking in an interview saying that she would bring in a rack of clothing that she could see the characters in, and then see basically what the actors themselves would gravitate towards. And her team consisted of about 50 people, and they all worked together to tailor each individual character's look. Um, but yeah, like you mentioned, it's set in the 50s, so that was the inspiration behind the clothing. Josh said that this is actually her favorite era, so it was meant to be this collaboration for this film. And another inspiration was the Lower East Side, which, it takes place in New York, as most of our movies do.
True.
um, so yeah, so she basically had this thought of like the city and its influences, and it was like a nice quote that I don't think I have included in here, but she was saying basically like, if you really think about New York versus like other places, like there's no other place that you can find like the sense of style that a New Yorker has, just because again, it's like made from so many different influences. So it's like if you really think about it, no other place has a fashion sense like New Yorkers do. So
Yeah.
that basically was something that she wanted to incorporate in the film as well. But basically for Marty, Timmy's character, his suits were kind of like echoes of the silhouette of like criminals. So gangsters were basically pretty
Nice.
much the influence behind his costuming, and again, pretty much goes in line with what he uh, the people that he became entangled with in the film. Um, so basically, Safdie also looked at like this tailor in I think it's in New York. Les Taylor is basically is who he looked to, whose clientele also included like Jewish gangsters. So that's
Nice.
basically again just another detail of like their inspiration. So basically, this is a quote from him. He said, "The size of your inseam would be a sign of your wealth. The more money you had, the more fabric you had, obviously." So that spoke a bit to Marty's desire and the gangsters showing off and presenting themselves as tough men. So you see the film, that's really reflected in there. But another inspiration was basically flamboyance. So if there's like a swag to Marty. I don't know if you would agree, but there's a confidence to his character. And Safdie basically wanted like the shirts to translate that. So he wanted them like really like flowy and billowy, kind of again, just like the suave character, right? And yeah, just like you mentioned earlier with the contact lenses, like eyeglasses were used to juxtapose the gangster vibes. So there's still kind of like an innocence to him, whereas like his silhouettes are meant to be like, oh, I'm a tough guy, you know?
Sure.
But yeah, like you mentioned, yeah, Chalamet basically wore contact lenses to distort his vision to then be able to wear prescription glasses, so he gets to have that sense of like, oh, like I can see with these versus not having them on. And like that quote above said about the money was also an influence. So basically looking at the Lower East Side in the 40s. So we're going back like a decade. focusing on what people were wearing during that time. So again, just feeling like they're in the past, and using that Lower East Side versus the Upper East Side to show that like money juxtaposition, like that wealth disparity. So you have like the Lower East Side again feeling like they're like stuck a decade in the past versus like the Upper East Side meant to represent like off the runway, like haute couture, you know. And so one of the characters that I think this was also like a Variety article was that they focused on was Kay, which is who Gwyneth Paltrow plays in the film. Balenciaga and Dior were heavily influential in her looks. So also like they took into consideration the fact that these were two fashion houses that really emerged during that time in real time. So it was also again meant to represent like the emergence of modernity. Grace Kelly and Marlene Dietrich were also influences for her character. And even Belisi said that she had brought in some of her own clothing for the character. So there are some clips where she's wearing like her shoes and her skirts, which I thought was really neat. I don't think I've heard very many costume designers say, "Oh yeah, I brought my own clothing to the set for this."
Right.
But also, there are Japanese sequences in the film that were also an inspiration for her. Her family is Japanese as well, and they came over to the U.S. after the war. So this is post World War II. And so she talked about how her family's history played a role in her designing process. So she used like her family albums as references for those specific sequences. And then obviously talked about her family history after they came to the US after the war. They were sent into internment camps. And then a few years later, they moved to New York City. So just a little bit of history there. And then moving on to some fun facts. So there's a gray suit in the film that Marty wears. I could not tell you what scene it is, but gray suit. I feel like I should give the film a chance. You know, it's Oscar nominated. I don't know. But basically, this piece was sort of the epitome of his character's ambition, is what Belisi said. What he aspires to be, and to have, basically, you know, like again, going back to that, like wanting to be something greater in life, right? Like he's ambitious, so it's very much reflective of the man he wants to be versus who he actually is at that point. And then shoulder pads were incorporated to prevent the character from looking collegiate in his suits. So I fear that baby face played an influence on that. And then her final fun fact, she actually created 16 national tennis table teams pieces for the film. Basically used different like countries as reference, but basically took creative control for some of the other table tennis teams. So that was pretty neat as well.
I will say that was kind of like my favorite scene in the movie was them like taking a picture, like all the Olympians, you know,
Mm-hmm.
because it's like you can see each individual logo. Like she really did like do well. She really did take the time to like research like all these countries and stuff. Like I actually thought it was like legit until I
Mm-hmm.
was reading that article and I was like, oh wow, like she really did that. Like wow.
Yeah,
All right, last but certainly not least, we got Sinners
certainly not.
by Ruth E. Carter. So, this is not the first time Ruth E. Carter has worked with Ryan Coogler, the director of the film. If you're familiar with Black Panther or Wakanda Forever, that was her. And apparently, she says the film inspiration began after Ryan called her and spoke about his interest with Southern roots, rich history of the blues, and the haunting legacy of the Mississippi Delta. As the movie takes place in 1930s Clarksville, Mississippi during the Jim Crow era. So she consulted with multiple historians and scholars for our fave characters. And that's why the film is incredibly historically accurate. Like down to like the gambling scenes. Like barely 2 minutes of the movie, but Ryan did hire like historical gambler experts. It's quite impressive to say the least. Like every single detail we see on screen was thoroughly researched by Ryan and his team. And they're very, very respectful of all these traditions in the deep south and with spiritual um, people like Annie, like with voodoo and with hoodoo, which I found to be the most admirable, to be honest, because with like, you know, with most films nowadays, you know, they constantly depict Latino, Hispanic, or, you know, people with voodoo or hoodoo history to be, like into witchcraft or whatever, like American Horror Story esque. You know what I mean? It's not taken seriously. Versus with this, you can definitely tell that like Annie really is a fully fleshed out person. And her spirituality is the backbone of who she is, but not entirely why she is the way she is. You know what I mean? And I will give Ryan credit for that. And for Ruth too for depicting that in the costuming for Annie. So you might also be familiar with Ruth's work for Old Boy and Do the Right Thing, which should have been Oscar nominated, I will say, as
Mm.
someone that loves Do the Right Thing. But she is an incredible costumer. And this making her fifth Oscar nomination has made her the most nominated Black woman in history.
Yay!
So congrats to her. And she looked at various paintings for all of these characters. She said, I felt like this was an American story, and a lot of old American paintings are very simple in their color palette. So I decided I wanted a very simple color palette that was red, white, and blue, like the American flag. A big chunk of the film is focused on sharecroppers and on plantations. And it was very important for her to depict workwear very, very accurately, and how they basically made something out of nothing back then, especially when they arrive at the juke joint, where people are wearing their best, but their best is very different compared to like, people with money, essentially, or people up north. And she said that like she told her background costumers they couldn't do any alterations on anybody's. They could not bring in no waste. They couldn't like tailor anything. They had to make it look as organic as possible, whether it be boxy or kind of little wonky. Still, it had to be historically accurate in that way because they didn't do that back then. They couldn't afford to, and they didn't have the time. So if something was long, you had to turn the cuff up because that's exactly what they did back then. So the twins were not only inspired by the mobs they worked with. Obviously, that was a really big thing back then when people first watched the movie, how everyone noticed, like, oh, you know, but Flat Cap versus Fedora, the Italians versus the Irish. And,
Mm.
or should I say it's the other way around. Do not come for me. Do not come for me. Um, and with Stack, he's a very conscious dresser. He is a dandy in his own way. Every little detail is picked out for him, whether it be the 1920s cut with three buttons down the front of his suit, or, having that suit being made custom in Chicago, according to Ruth, because she says on his pants, the pockets are slanted. He's got the collar bar, he's got the tie bar, he has the cufflinks, he's got everything. So it's most likely that the suit was custom made when they were up in Chicago doing God knows what. And with Smoke, he is less conscious. He doesn't really have a tie, but he has like a high collar and is starched, which is very important because back then people could not afford to do that. It was too expensive. So him having that little detail really made me, someone who likes studying menswear, realize like, oh, they kind of have money. He represents the everyday man. She describes him as more as like a brawler. Like he likes working with his hands. Again, they also both serve together too, I believe. So like he's the type of guy that like kind of like, carried that part of himself in the service back home with him.
Mm.
His suit is more boxy, it's less tailored, and since he's hiding a holster and a knife, kind of looks a little bit bulky. She says his look reminds her of Don Cheadle in Devil in a Blue Dress. So that's kind of like where her inspo came from for Smoke. And with Annie, when we first see her in the doorway, she's decked out head to toe, and we get to see her in her entirety, where Carter describes her being kind of like armed with the things that make her part of her everyday life, essentially, whether it be the mojo bag or with her like different types of like, I don't want to say spices, but kind of like just organic things that she carries around with her roots and stuff. And they described her as also being kind of like not just spiritual, but very like flowy, kind of like whimsical. And so they added a French skirt to her ensemble to depict this kind of like whimsy and magical type of vibe that she has. And Carter really did feel like this was very important to add for her character. And some fun facts you probably might have missed, which, by the way, go watch Sinners again if you want to. It's back in theaters for, I think,
Yes.
this month, I believe, or the end of this month only. She says for Grace and Sammy, they are the standouts. And if you notice, they're the only two people wearing yellow in the film. Everybody else is wearing either black, not black, oh my god, is either wearing blue or red. And they're the only two that are wearing yellow. And everybody else is just kind of like taking sides with like smoke or stack, kind of. And with Grace specifically, the only time we ever see her wear blue and red is when she's working on the sign for the juke joint, and she's wearing this like jumpsuit with a bandana, and she looks very much like Rosie the Riveter. And that's kind of like tying back to that Americana type of aesthetic that she was going for, like the Norman Rockwell type of paintings that she was referring to in the beginning. So I thought that was kind of ironic because when I was watching the film for the first time, like I thought, oh, so Grace and her husband and her kid is like basically the American dream. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's who they're supposed to be. And I thought it was really funny that they had her dressed as like Rosie the Riveter, you know, like this really strong, independent lady who at the very end had to make the difficult decision of like staying or going to protect her family. So incredible work yet again.
Yes.
And congrats again to Ruth for the nomination. It's wow. Like, oh my God. Also, speaking of Ruth, I believe like with Sinners being nominated for not just costuming, but for cinematography, like first ever Filipino person to ever be nominated as well. So
Yay.
congrats to them.
Look at them just making history. And yeah, definitely check out this film. I feel like it's crazy to me that it was last year that it came out. I don't know why
Right?
it's felt like it's been so long since it's been out. But
That's
yeah,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like with Sinners, it was such like a cultural like moment. You know what
yeah,
I mean? Like everybody remembers where they were at when they first watched it or like when they first heard about it. And
yeah. Just
that's all I'm
mind-blowing film, yeah. Cannot recommend it enough. And yeah, it's interesting to know, like, the small detailing, in designing the costumes for the twins, just knowing how they tried to, give the audience a hint of which twin they were looking at, differentiating between the 2. And yeah, I can definitely tell there were some moments where that, like, no alterations that were made, there were some moments throughout the film that you kinda do pick that up, like, "Oh, yeah, shouldn't that be, you know, a little
a
bit
little
up? Shouldn't
cinched.
that be a little bit cinched?" Yeah, but so yeah, knowing that she stuck to history was really a nice detail. All right, so before we go, who do we think is gonna win?
For costuming, I man, I think it's gonna go down to either Frankenstein
Mhm.
or Sinners. I don't know about Hamnet. I would be kind of surprised if they take it home,
Yeah.
but I'm kind of leaning more towards Frankenstein because I feel like now people are kind of like waking up to Crimson Peak. I've been seeing a lot of like talk
Yeah.
about that and how Kate should have been nominated for Crimson Peak. I mean, I want
Mhm.
all of them to go home with something, but realistically, I'm thinking Frankenstein. But then
Yeah.
again, like it's hard because like horror is never like, you know what I mean, never like given accolades during award season. So like,
Yeah. So the fact that we have, like, Sinners and Frankenstein, I think this is a shift. I hope this is a shift because I
hopefully,
need people to pay attention to other shows, other films. Just
definitely.
saying. We still have a few months for y'all to get with the program. But yeah, I feel like it's gonna be Frankenstein just because of the extravagance of the costuming and the detailing behind that. Avatar, I mean, a lot of hard work that was poured into that, but I don't know. I feel like that I'd put that at the bottom. Marty Supreme. I yeah. So for me, I hope it's either Sinners or Frankenstein, but I feel like it's gonna be Frankenstein. I hope it is.
I hope it is too. I hope they win for costuming and production because let's talk about that. Like the lab, iconic. Like
Yes.
they really did their big one with the lab. Like I'm still just like I'm just like still fangirling over that. Like they really just depicted Mary Shelley's work in the best way. So hopefully they're given some accolades for that too. For
Yeah.
makeup and hair, I will also say that that like section is also like mostly horror dominated, which
Mm.
very impressive. I will
Yeah.
give the Substance credit for that from last year because they took home the gold for that.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm really like surprised the Ugly Stepsister received a nomination. Like, you're already laughing because I am like the marketing manager for the Ugly Stepsister. I tell
Mhm.
everybody about it. Even my hairstylist, I'm like, "Have you heard about the Ugly Stepsister?" And so I'm happy they received that. And I don't know. It's kind of up in the air for that category too, because I think it's the Smashing Machine, the Ugly Stepsister. I think Marty Supreme is up there too
Mm,
for the prosthetics work. So, man, I don't know. And I think Frankenstein is too. Mike Hill is nominated, and Cleona Fury from Frankenstein. So, I don't know. It's kind of up in the air. Oh, and Sinners.
yeah.
So, that one's going to be rough. I hope it's
Yeah.
anybody for that, but it's most likely going to be Frankenstein because of the creature. I could kind of feel it. Yeah.
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 I hope so. Again, just because you know us, we feel like horror doesn't get enough recognition with these big award shows, and I feel like, yeah, Sinners and now definitely Frankenstein, there's again a conversation behind. There's more to these films than just the visual aspects of like the horror of like the blood, you know. There's a story underneath. So, yeah, hopefully this is again a shift and hopefully more people decide to lean into the genre and really dive into the stories behind the genre in general.
And even like with Sinners too, like it's a historical piece.
Mhm.
And I've seen people argue it's a musical. So like,
I see that argument.
right? So it's like
Yeah.
it's a little bit of everything. And
Yeah.
that's why I judge people so hardly when they say, "Oh, like Sinners didn't deserve, whatever." I'm like, "Okay, so
No.
I know what you are."
You're
Like,
just saying the
okay.
quiet part out loud.
Exactly. I'm like, "Come on. Come on.
Yeah.
Who do you think's going to take home the gold man for best actor?"
Listen. Listen. I don't want to get into that. Okay. I would hope it's Michael B. Jordan just cuz we got two of him, and if you think that there's something wrong with two Michael B. Jordans, then bye, cuz I will never say no to more than one Michael B. Jordan. But
But what? But what, Valerie? But what? Say it.
but it's most likely going to be Timothy Chalamet. I don't know.
I got a feeling someone bought it for him already. I'm not gonna say who, but I wouldn't be surprised
The
if he
devil
won.
works hard, but she works harder.
Hmm. And I'm on the
And
same boat.
listen, he's got some great films in his filmography, you know, but
Not
there
this
were
one.
just like a lot of better performances. Just yeah. And hey, if you can't take constructive criticism, then you shouldn't be in the industry. You shouldn't be making something and then putting it out into the world for people to judge. So, but yeah, there were other things that I feel like he could have been nominated for in his filmography, but I mean, I guess it is what it is, but I would hope it's Michael B. Jordan.
I want it to be Michael so bad. Like, you know what my dream scenario is? My dream scenario is Jacob Elordi takes home the Oscar because
Yes.
not only is this his first time being nominated, but he is a little bit younger than Timothy, and it would
That's
make me
crazy.
yeah, ain't
That's
that
crazy to think
crazy?
about. Yeah.
Yeah, he's like 28. Timmy's 31, I think. He's about to turn 31.
Damn.
Crazy. I know. So like imagine that first time trying and you're nominated for an Academy Award. And then we got Timmy over here. I want to be one of the greats, Chalamet, not going home with nothing. That would make my year. Like I'm gonna throw everything on the grill if that actually happens.
He can
Hell,
have
I
his
will even
Leonardo.
pour one out for him too. I don't even drink like that, but like I will be celebrating over here because
Like, yeah, like he can have his Leonardo DiCaprio moment sometime later in his life. Like, it's okay. You'll get there eventually. But like, there are some performances that to me superseded that. But I don't know. I'm not on that board to vote.
man, and like BAFTA's nominations came out today, and he's also nominated for Best Actor, and I'm like,
And
of
then I think
course.
there's that thing where like if you pay attention to who wins what award, that basically guarantees. I mean, there have been some surprises over the last couple of years where like so and so won this award and people thought they were going to win the Oscar, but it turned out to be somebody else. So, I mean, technically it's not an inclination that he's going to win, but I feel like most of the time if you win a certain award, then you go to the next award and are expected to win that, then the next one expected to win that. So, we'll see, I guess.
Right, the odds are looking kind of good in his favor right now. But then again, that article came out today. So, like, I mean, yesterday, but really people are talking about it today. But I'm tuned into the culture. So it was yesterday for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, that happened. And I'm like, oh, so how's this going to affect his chances of winning? And I've seen people joke already, like, okay, Timmy's time's up. Congrats, Leo, for your second Oscar.
That'd be funny.
Honestly, yo, that would be even better if they gave him a second Oscar. Fantastic. I need that
I'm
to
like,
happen.
I don't know. Oh, yeah, that'd be kind of funny. They're like, and it's Leo.
I'm one of the greats, as some kids like to say. And he looks directly at Timmy when he says that.
He's like, see, you'll be one of the greats one day.
Give us 30 years. That would be his Joker origin story.
It
Like,
would.
I'm so serious. I think that would be the moment that, like, he pulls a Two-Face and we never see him the same.
Yeah.
Even, oh my god, I've seen people say Club Chalamet. She will also, like, have a field day if he doesn't win. And
Oh yeah, there's been a lot with that lady.
man, don't even get us started with that lady. Like, if you've been online, you already know. Like, there's just too much going on. And
Yeah.
there was like a time where like they were releasing jackets from Marty Supreme, and she was like low key bitter that she didn't get one. And then she was like writing about it in her Substack, and people were like, "Oh, like you don't have to be upset." She's like, "Who says I'm upset?" And everyone's like, "Okay."
Okay. Sure.
And then they released hats yesterday or like a couple days ago, and I'm like, my guy, the movie came out in December. Like, please, please chill out. I get it's award season, but like,
But I feel
the
like that should have been like the lead up to the film, like the
right,
promo to the film.
because they were giving them away like for free in some places in New York. So I'm like, you guys didn't think of doing this instead of spending like I don't know, like hundreds of thousands of dollars on a blimp to go around
Yeah.
LA. Like, come on. My main problem with Timothy Chalamet is, and a lot of actors too. I'm not going to say which ones, but they're kind of big. That like
Ooh.
they don't let themselves dissolve into their roles. Like they don't like disappear. And not to be like haha he he, but like it's literally a costume for them. You know, like at the end
Mhm.
of the day, it feels like they're pulling a Scooby Doo. Like they're putting on a mask and then they're taking it off. Like that's exactly what I thought of the entire time while watching Marty Supreme. Like, oh, that's just Timmy Tim, you know, wearing a little oversized, you know, suit. He looks great, but it's Tim. You know, like
Yeah.
there's no differentiating him and his roles, and that's the big problem a lot of people are having with him this award season. They're like,
Mm.
okay, you're playing yourself again.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Like, you
And
know what I
that's not to
mean?
say, yeah, it's not to say like, oh, they need to be method, but like
Right. Yeah.
just like, yeah, there's some actors where like you can just definitely tell that's that character and then this is you as yourself. So yeah. Yeah, I get what you mean.
And
So
it's
yeah,
like
that's why yeah, when I was watching that I was like, it's Timmy.
literally throughout the entire movie, I'm like, okay, so this kid's just like running around screaming in New York. And that's
Yeah.
another problem I have. Like, he doesn't even have a 50s accent. How are you going to base this off of a guy in the 50s? Which, that's a whole other problem, by the way. Like, the marketing and, like, the story. And, like, yes, it's based off of a real dude, but also it's not. Because there's, like, 80s synth pop going on in the
Yeah.
background. And they're kind of speaking, but not speaking in 50s lingo and dialogue. So I'm like, what are we doing here? Like, is this accurate or not? Like, what are we doing? At least with the Wolf of Wall Street, which you can kind of tell they were trying to go for that. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
they were accurate with like you know the dialect and with the way gangsters used to talk back then, and you know people in Wall Street used to talk back then.
Mhm.
Versus with this, it's like I don't know what's going on. Like people are just screaming in their original like speech, and there's just not much happening. And even the one scene that was interesting, the honey scene, if you watched it, you know exactly what I mean by it. Was the one scene everybody was tearing apart on TikTok for like a whole week. People were like saying, "Oh, this is disgusting." Then you got the other half, "Oh, this is kind of interesting," which I'm on that boat. Like, okay, like that was actually kind of interesting. They never mentioned it again. They just dropped the ball on that. And that's exactly like the mood for the entire movie. Like, yeah, it's interesting, but then it's not. And then you're back to square one in the very end. So I'm like, eh, you
Yeah.
know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I guess we'll see on March 15th how that plays out.
Hopefully, we will see some awards for Frankenstein, for
Yes.
Sinners, maybe a Hamnet sweep. Who knows? Jessie Buckley might take home the gold for
Yeah.
Best Actress. It's kind of been the main prediction so far. That's been the most consistent that she's going to win.
Yeah. Definitely like the breakout actor of like 2025. I mean, I'm sure she's been like, in other films, but like this is kind of like her moment. So, we'll see.
And we're going to see her again back in March for The Bride, which will either be the best movie ever or the corniest thing on planet Earth. And I hope it's a nice mix of both. But we shall see with Christian Bale and Maggie Gyllenhaal directing. So there's lots of goodness to be looking forward to in the future.
Yeah, definitely excited about what's to come, film and like TV wise. So, yeah. And now for our next episode, hopefully we finally get to Nosferatu by Rob Eggers. So, stay tuned for that.
They also just wrapped production for Werewolf.
Yay!
So yeah, they had the wrap party a few days ago. So I'm taking it as a good sign that we're going on the right path. And also, we just got that like terrible snowstorm this
Yeah.
weekend, so the vibes are fantastic. There's snow on my windowsill. I don't know if you can see, but like my cats have been staring at it the entire day. Just like 2 inches of snow
Yeah.
outside my window. But we'll see you guys then, and let's see who takes home the gold.
See ya.